Scouring of the Shadow Council, 4 years after the Dark Portal. Warchief Doomhammer had no means, nor the inclination, to pursue Stormwind's refugees. The Horde had taken heavy losses to achieve victory, and he knew he needed to secure his conquered land before facing any new enemies. He sent messengers back to Draenor to call upon the remaining clans, the War Songs, the Shattered Hand, the Laughing Skull, the Thunderlords, and the Bone Chewers would need time to reach the Horde's new territory. Orgrim used that time to consolidate his control of the Horde. His first priority was eradicating the Shadow Council. Though it was a powerful force, it was the root of the Horde's corruption. Orgrim believed that the Shadow Council was in league with the dark forces that were manipulating the orcs, and that the Warlock's obsession with foul magic was what had killed Draenor. On a more personal level, Orgrim also wanted revenge. Members of the Shadow Council had murdered Durotan, Draka, and their infant child, as far as Orgrim was aware. The Shadow Council's whereabouts were unknown. Luckily, there was someone to interrogate. Gul'dan was still unconscious, but the Horde had captured his puppet, Garona, as she tried to escape from Stormwind City. Orgrim had her tortured until she revealed where the Shadow Council had built its secret refuge, Blackrock Spire. A large force of Horde soldiers stormed the smoldering volcano. No fire elementals or dark iron dwarves barred their way. Ragnaros and the old gods kept their presence hidden, eager to see how the violent situation would play out. The Shadow Council warlocks would do little to save themselves. Their fell power could only delay Orgrim's wrath for so long, and they fell before the Warchief's loyal followers. One of the few council members to survive was Shogal. The ogre made a very convincing case for why he should be spared. Without Shogal, the Twilight's hammer would succumb to madness again. Could Orgrim really afford to lose such a capable fighting force? Shogal swore his allegiance to the Warchief, claiming that he had been manipulated into Gul'dan's service. Orgrim accepted his surrender reluctantly. He wasn't sure whether the two-headed ogre was telling the truth, and he didn't particularly care. He needed fighting power to protect the Horde's new lands. Shogal also proved his usefulness when he introduced Orgrim to the dark iron dwarves who lived deep within the mountain. The rapport between the ogre and these creatures was an unexpected advantage. The dwarves agreed, at Ragnaros' secret command, to allow the Horde to claim Blackrock Spire as its new headquarters. The old gods were delighted to see what chaos the orcs would sow on Azeroth in the coming years. The Warchief also spared Garona's life. It was no secret that Gul'dan had been remarkably cruel to her, and her assassination of Lane had been very helpful. She too swore fealty to the Horde. Orgrim charged one of his most trusted lieutenants, Aetrig, to act as her handler. In time, Orgrim's messengers returned from Draenor with bad news. The clans still on that world had descended deeper into bloodlust and had begun fighting with one another. Only a few skilled, disciplined orcs and a handful of ogres would be able to bolster the Horde. It wasn't what Orgrim had been hoping to hear, but it was what he had to deal with. And soon, he would control a source of power that he could never imagine, a weapon born from Azeroth's ancient past. The Demon Soul. Throughout the First War, Azeroth's mighty dragons were largely absent from the conflict. For many ages, these majestic creatures had protected the world under the guidance of the 5 dragon aspects: Alexstrasza, Neltharion, Nozdormu, Ysera, and Malygos. Yet, they were no longer capable of safeguarding the world. They were still reeling from a betrayal millennia old. 10,000 years ago, during the War of the Ancients, the Aspects had joined the fight against the Burning Legion. Alexstrasza, Nozdormu, Ysera, and Malygos had willingly sacrificed a portion of their essence into a singular artifact that would channel their fury together. This weapon was known as the Dragon Soul, and it would be capable of annihilating Azeroth's demonic enemies. Only Neltharion did not infuse the artifact with his power. He had crafted the weapon and presented it to his allies. On the surface, his intentions seemed pure, yet, in truth, they were anything but noble. Unbeknownst to the other aspects, Neltharion had fallen under the influence of the old gods. After the other aspects empowered the Dragon Soul, Neltharion wielded the artifact in battle. He destroyed scores of demons with the weapon, but he was not content to focus his wrath solely on the Legion. Neltharion also turned the Dragon Soul against his friends and allies. This shocking betrayal broke the unity of dragonkind, and it earned Neltharion a new name, Deathwing. The other dragon aspects eventually recovered the artifact from their brother. They were troubled to find that they could not destroy or reclaim the power they had infused into the weapon. The aspects had little choice but to hide the Dragon Soul in a place where no one would think to look, a remote corner of the world that would become known as the Red Ridge Mountains. Enchantments were also placed upon the artifact, preventing Deathwing or any other dragon from ever touching it. In the millennia that followed, the weakened dragon aspects largely retreated from the world. Deathwing's betrayal had changed them forever. The bronze dragon aspect, Nosdormu, occupied himself with the ancient task of safeguarding the past, present, and future. He rarely emerged from his swirling timeways. The green aspect, Ysera, spent much of her time monitoring the health of Azeroth's wild from the Emerald Dream. The blue dragon aspect, Malygos, had lost himself to madness due to Deathwing's actions, and he secluded himself inside his lair, the Nexus. The red dragon aspect, Alexstrasza, did intervene in the activities of the world's mortal races, but only rarely. She also kept watch for any sign of Deathwing. After the War of the Ancients, Deathwing had disappeared and settled into a deep slumber. The Dragon Soul had been too much for even the corrupted dragon aspect to wield in battle, and the artifact's power had nearly destroyed him. He had been forced to attach metal plates to its spine to keep his fiery body from tearing apart. Deathwing needed time to recover from his wounds and regain his strength. During his long slumber, the other dragonflights hunted his corrupted children to the brink of extinction. The incredible amount of magic that was used to open the dark portal finally roused Deathwing. He watched with fascination as Stormwind and the Horde fought, and he became convinced that the orcs might be the means by which he could restore his wounded black dragonflight to its full glory. Deathwing knew that more than just the other dragon aspects would oppose him if he ever came out of hiding. Many of the mortal races would as well. If the Horde could break Azeroth's kingdoms, eliminate some of the strongest cultures in the world, it would allow Deathwing to devote his full attention to fending off his fellow aspects. During the First War, Deathwing's old godmasters had urged him to take small steps to aid the orcs. Nothing too drastic, of course, for he did not want to attract the attention of the other dragonflights. Yet, the old god saw Deathwing's intervention as a way to engulf the world in chaos. The first thing he had done was to take on the guise of a human noble from Stormwind. He had visited Lordaeron and charmed the aristocracy with gossip. When stories of the Horde's invasion finally reached their kingdom, Deathwing openly scoffed at them. He told Lordaeron's upper society that the tales were fabrications meant to hide growing problems with human rebels. His lies were far more believable than the desperate pleas for help from Stormwind. To win over those who stubbornly believed the reports from Stormwind, Deathwing turned to his sorceress abilities. He subtly influenced the minds of Lordaeron's nobles, preventing them from taking any action against the Horde. Once he was certain that Lordaeron would send no aid against the Horde, Deathwing had moved south. Taking on the form of a Blackrock orc, he had examined the orc society from the inside, living as one of them for months. It had been easy for him to sense the hidden power driving the Horde's action. and before long, he had maneuvered himself into the good graces of various individuals. Gul'dan believed he was a loyal follower. Blackhand believed he was a proud Blackrock orc. Even Orgrim Doomhammer believed he was a stalwart ally. In the end, Warchief Blackhand had fallen to Orgrim. But that was not an issue. The Shadow Council served the Legion, and Deathwing served the old gods. Shattering the Legion's hold on the orcs only made them more vulnerable to his masters. There remained only one problem. The Horde had been weakened by the First War. If the rest of the human kingdoms were to unite, the orcs would not have the means to destroy them. Even if they could, they would surely awaken too many enemies. If the other dragon aspects became aware of the threat the Horde posed, the orcs would not stand a chance. Yet, the Dragon Soul was still out there, because it connected powers from all the aspects except for Deathwing. It could be used against them, for the purpose of their destruction or control. No dragon could wield the artifact, but the orcs could. They would make very convenient allies. Deathwing granted visions to one of the clan chieftains. He had learned much about the Horde and its ways, and he believed that Zuluhead, leader of the Dragonmaw, would be most receptive. Zuluhead was bombarded with vivid dreams of his clan's taming and riding strange, powerful winged creatures. In the human tongue, these beasts were called dragons. It was an intoxicating sight. The heritage of the Dragonmaw had been to tame Rhylax on Draenor, to make them Nelgor, loyal beasts. To once again soar in the sky was an idea that could not be resisted. If properly tamed and broken, these dragons would make excellent Nelgor. Once the hook was set, Deathwing coaxed Zuluhead to the Red Ridge Mountains. Hidden deep beneath the mountains, protected by wards and guarded by a red dragon named Orostras, was a featureless gold disc. This was the Dragon Soul, untouched since it was buried millennia ago. Zuluhead and his clan immediately fell upon Orostras. They had never faced a red dragon in battle before. Over a dozen orcs perished in the fight, but they succeeded in killing the Guardian. Zuluhead then ordered his clan's greatest warlock, Necro Skullcrusher, to recover the artifact. The orc shattered the relic's defenses. He sensed faint fel energies on it, a remnant of its use in the War of the Ancients, and he renamed it the Demon Soul. Far from Red Ridge Mountains, Alexstrasza sensed the breaking of the artifact's wards. When she heard no word from the relic's guardian, she grew concerned. Alexstrasza took several of her red dragons and hurried south. They believed that some foolish mortal had somehow stolen the artifact, and that Orostras was in the midst of trying to hunt it. They thought it would be easy to help him retrieve it. In truth, they were flying into Deathwing's trap. Council of Seven Nations. As Lothar and Stormwind's refugees fled north, word of the city's destruction spread to other nations. Lordaeron's ruler, King Taranas Menethil II, was deeply shaken by the news. It had been difficult to sift fact from rumor. At first, the king had not even believed that the orcs were real. Now, he knew they were a grave threat. When Stormwind survivors finally arrived in Lordaeron, Lothar told Taranas of the Horde's true might. He urged the king to gather the other human nations immediately. Without unity, he argued, the Horde would have no difficulty picking off each kingdom one by one. In time, the leaders of all the human nations gathered in Lordaeron's capital city. There had not been such a gathering in recent memory. Joining Taranas and Lothar were King Gen Greyman of Gilneas, Lord Admiral Daelin Proudmoore of Kul Tiras, Archmage Antonidas of Dalaran, King Thoras Trollbane of Stormguard, and King Aidan Perinold of Alterac. This occasion was deemed the Council of the Seven Nations. At the outset, unity seemed to be a distant dream. Taranas called upon his fellow rulers to join together and form an unstoppable alliance of human nations. One that would eradicate the threat of the Horde and reclaim Stormwind for its survivors. There was some interest. Archmage Antonidas, representing Dalaran's Kirin Tor, had heard first-hand accounts of the Horde from Khadgar. Proudmoore was friends with Anduin Lothar, and he believed that vengeance on behalf of a destroyed human nation was the correct course of action. Trollbane had a close relationship with Lordaeron, and he, too, was willing to fight. Yet, Gilneas and Alterac were not so easily convinced. They openly expressed suspicion about whether creatures from another world had invaded at all. Deathwing's rumors had spread far beyond Lordaeron. They believed there must be some other explanation. While the Council of the Seven Nations continued its meeting, the Horde prepared for war.